The room is quiet, save for the soft, aquatic rhythm of the echocardiogram. On the screen, the man sees his own heartbeat, not dramatic, not flat, but slower than it should be. The doctor's voice is kind. "Your heart isn't failing," she says, "but it's tired." He nods. There's no panic in his expression, only a strange calm, a stillness that wasn't there before. He looks out the window, where light flickers through the trees. Something has changed, not just in his chest, but in how he feels the moment itself, as if time, normally so slippery and fast, has sat down beside him. What does it mean, he wonders, when the rhythm of life itself begins to slow, but you are still here, still thinking, still remembering, still loving? The heart is not just a pump, it's a metronome of experience. It beats, and you are. Every pulse sends not just blood, but identity through your veins. It keeps time for your entire life, measuring minutes not in numbers, but in beats. So what happens when that beat softens? Does time stretch, or do we finally begin to notice it? We often imagine time as abstract, floating somewhere outside of us, on clocks, in calendars, in aging photographs. But time, in its most intimate form, lives in the body, and the heart, more than any other organ, is the keeper of that time. 100,000 beats a day, nearly 3 billion beats in a lifetime, each one an invisible drum roll of presence. You don't feel most of them, but together they carry you across decades, until one day something shifts, a missed beat, a shortened breath, not an emergency, but a message, a reminder that the seconds have always been inside you, and that they are not infinite. And here lies the contradiction. We think of time as cold and cosmic, but it's deeply personal. The slowing of a heart doesn't just change circulation, it changes perception. Some patients, when diagnosed with early heart failure, describe unexpected clarity, a sense of peace, a sudden reordering of what matters. It's not just psychological, it's neurological. As the heart changes, so does the nervous system. Cortisol levels drop. The brain's time-keeping structures recalibrate. Some people begin to remember things long forgotten. Faces, smells, a song playing during a childhood rainstorm. Others say time itself feels different. Slower, yes, but also richer. Is this grief, a biological reckoning, or something more? Could it be that there's a secret hidden in the rhythm of a failing heart? A truth that isn't about disease, but about awareness. As the heart grows tired, maybe the mind begins to wake. Maybe, in those slower pulses, we don't just survive. We begin, for the first time, to truly notice our lives. Long before we understood the brain, we trusted the heart. In ancient Egypt, when a person died, their heart was weighed against a feather, not their mind. The heart was thought to hold memory, morality, and spirit. If it was heavy with wrongdoing, the soul would be devoured. If light, it would continue on. For thousands of years, across continents and cultures, the heart was not just an organ, it was the seat of emotion, the vessel of life, the compass of the soul. In medieval medicine, the rhythm of the heart was seen as a mirror of character. A slow, steady beat signalled a balanced nature. A rapid, erratic one warned of passion, vice, or spiritual unrest. Physicians believed the pulse could reveal love, fear, truth. Though imprecise, they were not entirely wrong. The heart, as we now know, responds to thought, to mood, to memory itself. In this way, the ancient intuitions were not illusions. They were early echoes of a deeper connection we're still learning to understand. Then came the shift. In the 17th century, William Harvey traced the motion of blood through the body, establishing the circulatory system as a mechanical process. The heart, once poetic, became a pump, a marvel of valves and muscle. For the next few centuries, it was treated that way, dissected, diagrammed, repaired, but still, something was missing. Harvey could describe how blood moved, but not why the failing of that movement sometimes brought sorrow, memory, or grace. He could trace the path of arteries, but not the sudden urge to make peace with the past that some patients felt after a skipped beat. It wasn't until the 20th century that doctors began to understand heart failure as a chronic condition, a long, slow shift, not a singular collapse. We now define it not as the moment the heart stops, but as the gradual weakening of its ability to pump efficiently. Blood still moves, but less forcefully. Organs receive less oxygen. Muscles fatigue. Breathing becomes effortful. It's not always dramatic. In fact, heart failure often hides in plain sight. A little more tired at the end of the day, a swelling in the ankles, a shortness of breath while climbing stairs. Slowly, almost silently, the body adjusts, until one day it doesn't. Today, more than 26 million people around the world live with some form of heart failure. It is one of the most common chronic illnesses of aging, but what fascinates researchers now is not just the body's decline, but the mind's awakening. Time and again, doctors notice something strange. Patients begin reflecting more deeply. They become more attuned to memory, to legacy. Some reach out to people they haven't spoken to in years. Others begin recording their thoughts, leaving notes for children, compiling old photographs. A few, without being told, begin to simplify, to pare life down to what matters most. They say they feel time differently. And so the question emerges, is this merely the psychology of aging, or is the heart itself, through its changing rhythm, sending new signals to the brain? We now know that chronic heart conditions affect not only circulation, but also hormones, neurotransmitters, and nervous system pathways. As the heart weakens, stress chemicals often decrease. Emotional regulation can change. The body, in sensing its limits, may begin to prioritize clarity over speed. It's easy to label this meaning-making as metaphor, but what if it's not? What if the biology of a slowing heart contains a kind of wisdom, a biological invitation to live differently when time becomes precious, to look backward, not with regret, but with reverence? Some patients plant trees, others spend more time watching the sky. Some write memoirs not for publication, but for peace. These are not random acts. They are signals from biology, from time, from the heart itself. In the early 2000s, something quietly revolutionary began to surface in cardiology wards. Researchers studying cardiac remodeling, the process by which a heart physically reshapes itself in response to stress, noticed an unusual pattern. Patients with progressing heart failure, even before showing signs of cognitive impairment, often began expressing thoughts that were philosophical, even poetic. They spoke of time differently. Some began tying up loose ends. Others described a new urgency to forgive, to remember, to understand. Their bodies were growing weaker, yes, but their minds, paradoxically, seemed more focused, more vivid, more aware. This puzzled the researchers. The medical models focused on the physical, blood flow, muscle strength, valve function. But now the data began pointing somewhere else, something deeper, something invisible. It turned out the heart wasn't just failing, it was communicating. The breakthrough came when scientists examined the autonomic nervous system, the intricate web of nerves that governs involuntary functions like breathing, heart rate, digestion, and emotional regulation. The heart and brain, they found, are in constant conversation. As the heart weakens, this dialogue changes. Neurohormones begin to shift. Cortisol, often associated with stress, drops. So does dopamine and norepinephrine, chemicals linked to energy, focus, and urgency. These aren't just abstract molecules. They shape how you feel, remember, and even perceive time. What emerged was startling. A weakening heart doesn't just tire the body, it rewires the emotional self. People begin to feel differently, not depressed necessarily, just different, less frantic, more still. And in that stillness, some begin to see with greater clarity. They feel memories coming back more vividly. Regret softens. The future contracts, but the past opens like a gallery. Not everything is remembered, but what is feels closer. And so the dilemma formed. Is this newfound emotional clarity a symptom of disease or a final adaptation? Should medicine see it as something to correct or something to understand? Because if the slowing of the heart changes the experience of time, it also shifts identity. You're not just your body, you are how you feel time pass through you. And when that tempo changes, so might your priorities, your memories, even your sense of who you are. One physician recalls a patient, a woman in her late 70s with advanced heart failure. She was quiet during her visits, not because of fear, but because she had begun writing. Every evening, she wrote letters to her children, to old friends, to a teacher she hadn't seen in decades, not to say goodbye, but to say thank you. "My body feels tired," she said once, "but my mind is wide awake. I can finally hear what my life has been trying to tell me." That sentence stayed with the doctor. It didn't come from a journal or a textbook. It came from the edge of science, from the space where medicine meets meaning. And it posed a profound question. When a heart slows, what if it's not just breaking down, but waking something up? In the clinic, a quiet tension begins to grow. On one side are the doctors, trained to extend life, optimize function, improve numbers. They watch heart rate variability, ejection fractions, sodium levels. Every slowing beat is seen as a signal to intervene. But on the other side are the patients, many of whom, once they learn of their condition, begin to ask different questions. Not just, how long do I have, but what do I want to do with this time? They start choosing meaning over metrics, and suddenly, the goals of medicine and the goals of the human spirit begin to diverge. There's a deeper question forming beneath all this. How much of modern life is built on ignoring the signals of the body until they become too loud to bear? We are taught to power through fatigue, to medicate pain, to fix rather than feel. But what if some signals, like a heart beginning to slow, are not merely symptoms of illness, but invitations? What if they're asking us to reconsider how we spend our days, where we give our energy, what moments we truly remember? Historically, medicine has often lagged behind in understanding the full dimensions of the heart. In the 1950s, after a heart attack, patients were told to lie still for weeks, total bed rest. The body was the only concern. Emotion was irrelevant, almost taboo. But that model failed. Eventually, cardiac rehabilitation emerged. Not just physical therapy, but counseling, education, support groups. Doctors learned that fear, identity, and grief were part of recovery. The shift was seismic. Healing the heart required more than mending tissue. Now we are on the edge of another shift, from survival to significance, and at the center of it is a structure only recently understood, the vagus nerve. This long, wandering nerve connects the brain to almost every organ, including the heart. In chronic heart failure, the vagus changes its signaling. This alters mood, stress response, even how memories are consolidated. People begin to notice emotional sharpness, increased sensitivity, a strange sense of clarity. It's not always distress, sometimes it's a deep calm. But here's the scientific conflict. Is this poetic biology or early cognitive unraveling? Are patients glimpsing a deeper truth or simply losing executive function in a way that feels spiritual? Neuroscientists debate this fiercely. Because if the change in time perception is biologically real, then maybe it's something we should be listening to, not just treating. Maybe insight isn't the opposite of illness. Maybe it's part of it. And so we arrive at the ethical dilemma. If a failing heart grants new perspective, should we honor it? Not just clinically, but personally. When a patient says, "I feel like I understand my life better now," do we chalk it up to medication, to hypoxia, or do we take it seriously? Some researchers have started to ask, what if decline opens a window, not a door? A window through which we see ourselves not as broken machines, but as organisms reaching for coherence, for peace, for meaning. Maybe a slowing heart, rather than shutting down, is tuning in, not to death, but to life, as it truly feels when we're finally paying attention. We're taught that time moves forward in a straight line, that it ticks from moment to moment with mechanical certainty. But for someone with a failing heart, that illusion begins to fray. Time no longer feels linear. It folds, lingers, echoes. Days stretch unexpectedly, not because there are more hours, but because each hour feels fuller, heavier, more alive. Time is no longer measured by a calendar. It is felt in the chest, where the rhythm changes, where the beat stutters or softens. A slowing heart doesn't just alter blood flow, it alters the perception of presence. For decades, we believed the heart was merely responsive to emotion, racing when we're anxious, slowing when we rest. But now, chronobiologists are beginning to uncover something deeper. The heart may not just respond to time, it may shape it. The sinoatrial node, often called the heart's pacemaker, creates the rhythm that governs not only circulation, but also, potentially, the brain's sense of now. It sends pulses that the brain synchronizes with, not just biologically, but perceptually. When that rhythm changes, slows, stutters, stretches, it may shift how consciousness experiences time itself. This leads to a startling insight. As the heart weakens, the brain's ability to batch time into tidy, sequential packages begins to dissolve. Moments lose their clean edges. Past and present begin to blend. A song from childhood evokes not just a memory, but a full-body presence. A photograph stirs not just recognition, but emotion so vivid it feels like return. These aren't hallucinations. They're echoes, waves of memory timed not by the clock, but by the pulse. You don't just remember life, you relive it, heartbeat by heartbeat. A scent, a voice, the sunlight through a curtain, all held inside the rhythm of the heart. As the beat slows, memory opens like a window, and suddenly, the person you once were stands beside the person you've become. This is the twist we almost never expect. We think of a weakening heart as the end of life, but biology suggests another truth. It may be the deepening of life. When speed fades, meaning emerges, the world softens, moments expand. What you lose in strength, you gain in clarity. This isn't just poetic, it's physiological. It's the heart, offering not just life, but the chance to feel that life more richly than before. Modern science is beginning to confirm what patients have quietly felt for years. The heart and mind are not separate entities, they are partners in perception, woven together by a delicate network of nerves, hormones, and rhythms. The baroreceptor reflex, which helps regulate blood pressure, and the vagus nerve, which runs from brainstem to gut, form a powerful feedback loop between the heart and the brain. When heart rhythms slow, whether from age, illness, or intentional practices like breathwork, the nervous system shifts. The body moves into a parasympathetic state, calmer, quieter, more open. And in that state, something remarkable happens. Reflection deepens, focus sharpens, memories, especially the ones with emotional weight, become more vivid and accessible. This insight is changing how we treat heart failure. Where once the focus was purely on pharmaceuticals and surgical intervention, clinicians are now integrating therapies that tend to the emotional self. Mindfulness programs, music therapy, and even narrative journaling have been added to cardiac care plans, not as luxuries, but as essential treatments. And the data is persuasive. Patients who engage in reflective practices, writing letters, keeping gratitude journals, participating in storytelling groups, not only report better quality of life, but also show measurable physiological improvements. In one notable study, cardiac patients who practiced daily gratitude and mindful reflection showed increased heart rate variability, a key indicator of cardiac resilience and autonomic balance. Another study found that patients who participated in guided storytelling sessions had 30% fewer emergency room visits within 6 months. Something as simple as sharing their experience allowed the body to stabilize, to regulate, to breathe. These aren't metaphors. These are medical outcomes. It turns out the nervous system listens, especially when we tell the truth. We're only beginning to grasp how memory, meaning, and biology intertwine. But the message is becoming clear. The emotional self is not separate from the healing process. It is central to it. A heart in decline is not merely a failing organ. It is a source of insight, a recalibrator of priorities, a messenger asking us to listen. And when medicine listens too, not just with tests and treatments, but with attention to story, memory, and reflection, healing begins to look less like a war and more like an embrace. What science now understands is this: slowing down doesn't always mean shutting down. Sometimes it means opening up to the self, to others, to life itself. In the quiet rhythm of a tired heart, there can still be growth, even grace, and perhaps, for those who listen closely enough, there is even a kind of wisdom. A man walks slowly through his garden. It's late afternoon, the light stretching long and golden across the tangled rows of green. The tomatoes have grown wild. The basil is seeding. The lavender leans toward the sun. He moves without urgency, letting his steps fall into rhythm with the breeze, not the clock. His heart still stumbles now and then. An uneven beat here, a pause there, but it no longer alarms him. It simply is. A reminder, a companion, a rhythm that asks him to notice, to feel, to stay present. He watches the wind tug gently at the leaves, listens to the birds negotiating the end of day, feels the soil soften under his feet. He no longer tries to outrun time. He moves with it. His granddaughter, a small voice behind him, asks, "Is your heart better now?" He turns, smiles, kneels carefully beside her. "It's not stronger," he says softly, "but it's wiser." She doesn't fully understand, but she nods, takes his hand, and together they water the plants that need it, clip back what's overgrown, and pause when a butterfly lands too close to disturb. A failing heart doesn't just mark the end. Sometimes, if we listen closely, it opens a beginning, not of more years, but of deeper days, not of urgency, but of presence. It teaches us that the measure of a life isn't only in how long it lasts, but in how fully it is lived while it does. That the real heartbeat of meaning may not come from strength, but from attention. The final question lingers like dusk. If your heartbeat is how you measure your time, what will you spend it remembering? What will you choose to carry forward in those moments when the world quiets, when the noise fades, when you are left with only the sound of your own breath and the gentle, imperfect rhythm inside your chest? And how will you know when it's time to slow down, not to give up, but to listen, to the garden, to the wind, to the people you love, and to your own heart, which may not beat forever, but while it does, carries everything you are.